Hello, I'm Mark Watson, EUROCAE Technical Program Manager from EUROCAE. So welcome back for the final session of the afternoon, and thanks again to our sponsors for their support for this EUROCAE Symposium. So this final session starts with a flash talk on the role of LDACS for the future Datalink applications. So I'm very happy to introduce Bernhard Haindl to give his flash talk on L-band digital aeronautical communication systems. Bernhard is a principal scientist at Frequentis with almost 30 years' experience in design and development of aeronautical air-ground communications. Currently, Bernhard is responsible for the architecture and specifications of the future terrestrial data link LDACS. Bernhard actively participates on several aviation standards committees at EUROCAE and ICAO. So please welcome Bernhard, who will provide insights into LDACS. Thank you, Bernhard.
So good afternoon, and thank you for the introduction and for having me here. It is a pleasure for me. So this flash talk today will be a short dive into the data communication infrastructure. So we will discuss pieces from the other side of the puzzle, what we heard this morning. So the communication infrastructure in aviation is currently in a phase of change. Someone would say that's always the case, but there are some decisions that need to be made in the next years, and there are also some milestones that need to be met. So coming back to the head of this talk, what role does LDACS play for future data link applications? So in short, LDACS is as mentioned already, the L-band digital aeronautical communication system, which is an air-ground radio communication standard designed for transport safety-related information in aviation. And it is the main pillar of future communication infrastructure. And the future communication infrastructure is an enabler for all the data applications that we, for example, and concepts that we heard this morning in the panel. So that actually says it all. But on the other hand, being an enabler is all well and good, but doesn't, on its own, it doesn't bring any benefits or add any values. You need applications like if you have a road network without cars, it doesn't bring you any benefits. So you need the application and you need to use the application, otherwise it will not bring the benefits. So you need to drive the cars on the road. So with this, it is also difficult to do a cost-benefit analysis with an infrastructure because the costs are clear, they are high. You have to deploy the infrastructure, and then you have to rely on that there will be application using this infrastructure and using it in a way that it brings benefits for the users or increasing the safety or any other KPIs. So to discuss this here, what is the role of LDACS, I will approach the issue the other way around. So I will say, what is if we do not change the current infrastructure? Will the applications then find the appropriate infrastructure, and can these applications be used? So I will start with the existing infrastructure, explaining the differences to the future, and then explaining the role of LDACS in it. So hopefully this works, yes. So ignore on one side the problems. On the left-hand side, you see now the existing infrastructure already added the SATCOM a few years ago. The SATCOM would not be there. It will be only a VTL Mode 2. On the bottom of this figure, you see the ground users, the different protocols, and the applications, two applications, ADSC and CPDLC, which are needed to communicate with applications in the aircraft. And they're using for this two different languages or two different network protocols, ACAS and ATN-OSI. Both are pretty old. ACAS is a character-oriented protocol from the 70s, and ATN-OSI is from the 80s, and it's used in Europe only. So these are more or less the network protocol glue together the applications via two different air-ground data links So the air-ground data links that are currently existing is the SATCOM and the VDL Mode 2 data link. VDL Mode 2, a terrestrial-based data link used for data communication. So what are the problems with this? So if you look only in VDL Mode 2, the data link performance is insufficient. So you have data capacity limitations and cybersecurity threats. Also, the two old languages, ATN OSI and DACS, do not provide any end-to-end security. So you have cybersecurity threats. And since ATN OSI is only used in Europe, you need dual stacks. You need to provide in the aircraft both ATN OSI and DACS. And so for global harmonization, you should harmonize these protocols. On the other side, you see now the existing or the future, from the existing to the future communication infrastructure. What has changed, I would say not so much. What really has changed is there is, instead of two clouds, there's one cloud. It's now ATN IPS, so based on the IP communication stack, which is the one which is used everywhere else. And you have added at least one additional safety link, LDACS here, together with VDL Mode 2. And I have added another box called hyper-connected ATM, which is a concept that I will discuss later. I will focus now on the safety links. And looking at this, saying, okay, what is now the major role of LDACS compared to the left-hand side? So LDACS, there's three reasons why we need LDACS in this future communication infrastructure. This is mainly availability, its scalability, and it is sovereignty. That means availability. It was from the beginning clear when this future communication infrastructure was designed. This infrastructure, you need more performance, you need higher reliability, you need higher capacity, and one system alone cannot bring this, or you need a lot of effort and a lot of money putting into the one system providing the high availability. Therefore, you need a second system to the IP SATCOM system, which provides the same capacity and the same protection against cybersecurity threats as SATCOM doing already. So it should be regarding diversity of technologies. There's one SATCOM system, there should be one terrestrial ground-based system. So that's regarding availability. So having two systems, comparing this with having, comparing to the existing infrastructure, you have already SATCOM, which is a kind of a four-line highway, and you have VDL Mode 2, which is a kind of a, I would say, poor or bad single-lane country road, very curvy. So that means if you have an issue with SATCOM, you will send all the data to VDL Mode 2, and then you have for sure a congestion. That means you will not meet the performance. Therefore, if you have two links which are equal, one SATCOM and one ground-based, then you can manage these links in a better way, and therefore you have seen here this multi-link concept with IPS, which compared, I called it dual link in OSI, which compared is much more flexible and allowing a much better sharing and load balancing of the traffic between the existing safety links. IP VDL Mode 2 is still here because the transition, I have not shown the transition here. Of course, there will be a very long transition phase where you need gateways communicating with an IPS system in the aircraft and an OSI system on ground. This is not shown here, so this is a simplified picture here. But again, this multi-link environment here allowing you, or the multi-link concept allowing you to use the links, the air-ground links, which are the critical links, because the ground infrastructure itself, there is a lot of capacity available, but the link to the aircraft is the critical one, and you need to manage these links in the best way. Coming to hyper-connected ADM, so this is a concept mainly to reuse existing public available links or commercial links already existing to the aircraft, adding additional means to allowing to use these commercial links for exchanging safety-related data, but only if there is safety link is available still. That means I would take it the other way around. In my opinion, the safety network or the safety links alone should be able to meet the performance requirements that are needed to transport all the safety-related data, even without hyper-connected ATM, so they should not rely on hyper-connected ATM only. And second, of course, if the promises will, or the expectations of hyper-connected ATM will getting through, then you need to find something to finance the safety links, because if you transport all the data over hyper-connected ATM solutions or links, then you will need some, you have still some costs for the safety links, and with that, you need some financing concept to have the safety links available when you need them. So sorry, now I need to pick up this. Coming back now to the LDACS characteristics and benefits, so why does really LDACS play the role that it just mentioned in the previous slide? So LDACS operates as an FDD system in the aeronautical L band, so in the safety band. It supports ATN OSI ECAS and ATN IPS, and it can provide digital voice and APNT, so this is navigation functionality. The scalability and robustness is an important characteristic of LDACS. Scalable, since it is a ground-based cell-oriented system. That means you can start deploying where it's the first need, and you can easily increase the capacity by adding additional cells. Robust, it is distributed system, and it is easy to maintain. Sovereignty, I mentioned already, the full control of the critical ground infrastructure in case of emergency. So you have your infrastructure in your own hands, and you can control it. You can control your national airspace with this. Performance and security, it provides 50 to 200 times the capacity of VTOL Mode 2. It is quality of service, enables the simultaneous usage of AOC and ATC at the same time. And it's important if you operate in a multi-link environment that you have a deterministic link management. That means that if you have multiple links, you should be very quickly detect a link error and communicate this to both ends of the system to allow a switchover. Security, mutual authentication, confidentiality, and integrity of messages, that's what ATN IPS is requesting from an air-ground data link. All this is in, and it is designed for doing a mutual authentication between the aircraft and the ground system. Yeah, LDACS is an open framework and standards. This was mentioned already, that standards are very important. So it fosters the market competition. It allows a selection of different data service providers. You can use one LDACS airborne radio, and you can communicate with multiple service providers on that. It is a global safety link standard, so it is standardized at ICAO and EUROCAE level, and LDACS complements VTOL Mode 2 as a logical successor. Coming now to the deployment concept, so the chicken and egg problem, when you're starting deploying or a new data link, then you need to integrate LDACS into the existing ground infrastructure. So a study showed that you can achieve 98% of the coverage that VTOL Mode 2 achieving today by reusing existing VTOL Mode 2 radio sites. So you do not need to add additional radio sites. You can reuse the VTOL Mode 2 radio sites, and since it's operating a different band, there is no interference. So a step rollout on ground, starting on ground, of course, in areas where the greatest needs for secure broadband communication. Where you have the greatest need for secure broadband communication. Yeah, efficient reuse of ground infrastructure mentioned. Not only the radio sites can be reused, also the ground data link ecosystem and the infrastructure to the sites can be reused. And in the aircraft, you share the antenna cabling with either VTOL Mode 2 or installing a combined VTOL Mode 2 LDACS radio. That is the current concept on that. So the main message is we should start with the demonstration phase for the LDACS ground system. I think also this was stated already today. There is a big gap from the research phase to the deploying phase, and we should start as soon as possible with the demonstration phase of LDACS to bring this into the operation. Yeah, final slide. About where we are today, what is the LDACS maturity, and what is the standardization status. So the LDACS ground infrastructure for 18 IPS reached already this so-called INSESAR TRL6, so the maturity level, the research is finalized. We can start demonstration and deployment phase in 2023, and for 18 OSI, we will reach this in next year in 2026. The LDACS airborne system will reach TL6 in also next year in 2026. So regarding the standardization on ICAO, we will updating the LDACS PFA into the Annex 10, Volume 3, and presenting this to the ICAO DCIWG, so the COM panel, in the second quarter of 2024. This was already done, and we will do the finalization of the LDACS PFA in first quarter of 2026. We will also finalize the LDACS manual in the end of 2026, and the publication of the LDACS MOPs and MAPs from EUROCAE also in end of 2026. And coming to this, what I want to raise here is compatibility testing. LDACS shares the spectrum with the legacy navigation and surveillance systems. So this was the main reason for the delay, and there were a lot of effort went into the compatibility testing. And therefore, an efficient spectrum management requires state-of-the-art standards for all systems in the band, and there is a EUROCAE Working Group 124 addressing this topic, and hopefully they come out with recommendations to making this easier, this spectrum sharing between different aviation systems. So, more or less my conclusions of this short talk is a high available FCI should stand on two equal legs, a satellite system and LDACS, providing sufficient capacity for all required applications. In Europe, we need such an infrastructure already, and we should start accelerating the implementation. We should not wait for others. That's one of the main messages, I think. Waiting for others brought us in the current situation that many options can no longer be implemented on time. Therefore, we take expensive and inefficient intermediate steps that costs a lot of money. And so saying perhaps we are too early in Europe, we're going in a direction where the others will not follow us. The global standards, IPS and LDACS, are standardized on ICAO, so the global standards guarantee the interoperability, and the other regions will follow later when they also have the needs to switch to such a modern 18 IPS-based future communication infrastructure. So, in my opinion, this would put us into the best position to successfully manage the challenges ahead. And finally, if you want to know more about LDACS, there was last year a white paper from different stakeholders, from ANSPs and ERE, DFS and NUTS, from airlines, Air France and Lufthansa, and communication service provider CETA, and other industry, which also is focused on the different benefits from the different stakeholders, what LDACS can bring which role LDACS can play for future applications. Thank you. That concludes my talk.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Milnes, one of the technical program managers with EUROCAE, and I'm pleased to introduce our panel this afternoon, Advancing ATM Ground Equipment Certification. The evolution of the ATM Ground Equipment Certification framework in Europe is a cooperative effort involving the ATM industry, national and European regulators, and air navigation service providers. This panel will reflect on the initial implementation of the new framework and the next steps being developed for the implementation through rulemaking tasks described in the EPAS, along with EUROCAE activities in the Working Group 130 launched last year. So please make use of the Slido QR code to pose any questions to our panel. And I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for the panel, Pascal Raoult. Pascal's working for Thales as ATC line product architect and in charge of the roadmap for the Top Sky ATC product. He's a member of the EUROCAE TAC and particularly significant in the role of this panel is the chair of our working group co-chair, of our working group 130. Pascal, I'll give you the floor and thank you to introduce the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Alex. So, good afternoon, everybody. I will be the moderator for this last panel of the day before the next activities, and I will introduce all the panelists that are today with us. So, we'll have Nikos Fistas from Eurocontrol, managing the standardization department, and we have Juan Luis Diz from Indra. Andrea Gartman from DFS, also representing CANSO, and we have also from our colleague from IASA, Manuel Rivas-Villa, that will help us to understand a little bit more this new framework. So, to first give you some, I would say, refresh training, I would say, for the air traffic controllers, we will present you a little bit what is today the conformity assessment for the ground. So, Manuel, if you can present us a little bit the framework to refresh to everybody what it is really.
Yes. So, should I?
Yes, you can go.
Thank you. So, yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to EUROCAE and thank you to all the sponsors inviting and welcoming and hosting us today. Pascal asked me, in fact, to give this brief introduction about the regulatory framework. I apologize in advance to those of you who are very well aware already of the framework. And also, I am very well aware of the time in the afternoon, so I will try to be brief and to the point. As you know, the regulatory framework for aviation in the EU, one of the key centerpiece elements is the so-called EASA Basic Regulation, which contains the principles, essential requirements for many domains, including also air traffic management and air navigation services. When we focus on air traffic management, air navigation services, there are, of course, a set of implementing acts that develop those principles and detail those into more detailed regulatory requirements. Looking at focusing on ATM-ANS, we can see 5 main blocks that you could also see on the screen. One is addressing the provision of ATM services, addressing the so-called common requirements that all providers are to comply with. Another one is addressing ATCO licensing, so taking care about competence, training requirements, and licensing requirements for air traffic controllers. The third one is the European Standardized Rules of the Air, so-called SERA, establishing the set of principles how operations in the airspace take place and being a common reference both for air traffic management organizations and for the airspace users. We have a fourth block now going to the bottom layer where we have airspace usage requirements, defining what is the equipage and other requirements in relation with the use of airspace to fly into the European airspace, EU plus EASA member states. And then we have the fifth block on ATM ground equipment. This is the latest addition, the new kid in the block with the implementing acts passed in late 2023. So those 5 blocks are the ones that help the implementation in ATM-ANS. When we look at the equipment, and this panel is about the equipment, the 2 more relevant blocks are the ones addressing the conformity assessment of the equipment and the provision of ATM-ANS services. And fundamentally, they are looking first at the level of the equipment. They are looking at the demonstration that the equipment is fit for purpose. And then at the level of the service provision is that all ATM-ANS services are safe and performant. And I think it's important, if you follow the direction of the arrows, it's important to also visualize that none of these implementing acts work in isolation. They need to be seen as a set of implementing acts, and there is a need to comply with all requirements to have a safety assurance from an end-to-end perspective. Moving now, focusing on the conformity assessment of ATM equipment and trying to give just a snapshot, in a nutshell, what are the main elements. I would highlight those three elements which you can see in the screen. With the new framework, all design production organizations are now required to be approved, and they need to demonstrate their capability to take responsibility for a certain equipment throughout their life cycle. That is one of the first elements. Second element is that it's not all equipment is treated in the same manner. There is a proportionality in the approach, so there are 3 different attestation methods depending on the criticality of the equipment. For the most critical equipment, this is subject to certification by EASA. Of course, the privilege to apply for a certificate is with the DPO-approved organizations. This is a prerequisite to apply, but certification is granted issued by EASA. The second layer of equipment is directly declared as compliant by an approved DPO, and the third layer is left also at the level of a declaration, but in that case from the air navigation service providers. The third element is the detailed specifications. So this is a key difference with the previous framework before 2023 or before 2018 if we look at the level of the legislation. So before there were not a common set of detailed specifications that would be applicable throughout Europe and to any attested equipment in Europe. And the ANSPs needed to identify in many cases which were the relevant industry standards or otherwise any material that was defining the requirements for the design development of their equipment. With the new framework, there are common technical requirements contained in these detailed specifications. And my last slide, just to avoid forcing any of you into a deep sleep, is about one of the key building blocks for this new system to work. And I would like to highlight those 2 columns that you can see there sustaining the roof of the house. One is the capability of the organization. The organization is capable of performing the design production of the equipment because this is demonstrated, and the organization is approved, ensuring this capability. And the second one is that all equipment to be attested needs to comply with the detailed specs, with those requirements contained in the detailed specs. And there, those detailed specifications contain a set of requirements. If we move to the right-hand side of the screen, a set of requirements at the level of a function, performance, interface for the different type of equipment. But they build strongly into or upon industry standards as acceptable means of compliance. So the details on the how for different parts of equipment is aimed to be built using available industry standards, fit-for-purpose industry standards. And this is one of the key principles and also a fundamental difference with the past framework. Availability of these standards enabling even the transition, evolution of the technology is a key building block for the introduction and the operation of the new framework. And I stop here.
Yeah,
I hope I haven't overrun too much.
Nice, Mike. Yes, thank you very much, Manuel. I think it's now good for everybody that everybody is on the same page. You understand a little bit the new framework, and we will start to get some dialogues with our panelists and to go deeper. So first, do not hesitate to ask questions on Slido. We will come back after that. So I would first start a question to Andrea. So, as an ANSP and representing also all the ANSPs with CONSO, how do you see this this way of working with this, I would say, framework with all the DPOs that we'll have to work with, and we know that you have sometimes in CONSO some ANSPs that probably will become a DPO. So, what is your feeling on that, and how you see that as an ANSP perspective?
Thank you, Pascal. Indeed, the relationship between us ANSPs and the DPO, I think, should not be different from today. The benefit of the regulatory framework is expected to be less effort at the ANSP side for conformance testing of the equipment functionality, and we want to rely on the compliance attestation when we receive your products. As regards the integration of these products into our final system on site, we do not intend to become competitors. The regulatory provisions do not explicitly require us to become DPO for this. Nevertheless, or however, the regulatory framework as well is not explicitly indicating the cases when we don't need to become DPO. So there are concerns that any item that an ANSP may supply on site in order to finalize the integration into that this will make necessary that the ANSP has to become DPO, and that this product has to undergo conformance assessment according to Regulation 76.8, the equipment regulation, as well. I think this is a concern. It has been issued sometimes, and from ongoing discussions, we know that this is not the case, and that was never the intent. But there is no written clarity how constellations undergo the conformity assessment, where only parts of the final system come from a DPO and other elements are supplied by the ANSP. But these other elements, I call them elements, are not subject to conformity assessment regulation. And for sure, the continued cooperation between the ANSP and the DPO will remain for the integration part, for the maintenance, for changes and change management. There is, however, you are right, there is a case where an ANSP intends to have the approval as DPO. For these cases, when we develop equipment with ATM, ANS functionality for our own use or even for sale. But in this case, there will not be no way of working together with any other DPO.
Thank you, Andrea. Juan Luis, so I have a question for you. So I'm seeing, because I'm part of it also, a lot of ground manufacturers that are deeply involved in and really engage to support the framework deployment. Could you tell us what kind of benefits you are anticipating with this, the introduction of this new framework?
Well, good afternoon to everyone. Well, some of the benefits that we identify have been also outlined in the previous, and I will insist in some of them. The first is the same definite rules. As Manuel has stated, the new framework provides common requirements set and also technical detail specifications that indicates the same level field for everyone. So all the manufacturers and the industry will follow the same rules. And this is an important way to harmonize, okay, and to create a common way of design and production of the equipment. The DPOs, and in particular Indra, we are expecting that the evidence that we gather during this design and production will be collected and reusable for the different deployments that we may provide the products. So this is an important thing that since the rules are defined and are common for everyone, we are also expecting that the evidence, the compliance demonstration evidence, can be reusable, and when one product is designed and produced, it can be deployed in several instantiations. Okay? Another important thing is what Andrea has stated. This is an end-to-end approach. The DPO, we start the chain during the design and the production, but afterwards, when we certify, depending on the kind of product, we certify or design of compliance or esteemed of compliance, the product, the ANSP should have a mutual recognition and trust in the product that we provide, because this will alleviate, as Andrea has said, relieve some activities, verification activities that the ANSP was performing. And maybe in the future they can avoid to do that because they recognize the work that has been performed during the DPO, always in the approval with the EASA. So this mutual recognition, I think, is another is a requirement, but it's also a benefit that I think that the framework is asking to all the stakeholders.
Thank you, Juan Luis. Nikos, I have a question for you. It's we are all EUROCAE members, and industry standards are key, in fact, for this, for all the aviation domain, for the airborne side, but also for the ground side, now with this new framework. So do you think that this new framework will require more standard to be used by EASA, like the detailed specification? So do you think we have sufficient resources and expertise to do it right now? Because we know that the framework is in the transition period and 28 is tomorrow. So what is your feeling as a Eurocontrol standard department on your side and with all the EUROCAE members?
So I think actually that Manuel put the answer at the part of his slides when he showed the industry standards and where it is below. So the short answer is yes, there is a lot of expertise in the aviation industry. So there is all these organizations with EUROCAE, Eurocontrol, other SDOs, then there is already a lot of industry standards there. So what also is required is that there's going to be a new type of standards. And this is where actually we need to be pragmatic, we need to be more to do some prioritization, actually, to try to see what is the first elements of this framework that will produce the benefits. I think that we need to avoid disruption of the existing operations to some extent, but at the same time, we need to start moving to this new framework. We heard the benefits from Juan Luis before about what this framework will bring. So the short answer is yes. I think in aviation, we do have all the expertise that we need. So we just need to do this collaborative environment between the regulator, of course, because we need to be guided by the regulator. Then we're having the industry, the NSPs, the end users, and also the SDOs that can actually support this process.
Okay, thank you. Manuel, I'm come back to you, and we understood that this framework, a key point is the global harmonization in Europe of everything which is deployed on the field. So could you explain us how this new framework will facilitate this global harmonization?
Thank you, Pascal. Yes, indeed. First, let me approach harmonization at European level as a building block towards that global harmonization. The fact that we are using a common set of requirements in the new framework, this enables a more seamless approach. And of course, that enables harmonization and a seamless access to the EU market for ATM equipment. Shared standards make it easier to deploy novel technologies across borders. That's self-evident in a way, if you allow me to say it this way. And the manufacturers will benefit also from the fact that approvals will be valid across the EU, as it was highlighted by Juan Luis, and enabling multiple air navigation service providers then to benefit and to credit from the same approval without additional work and additional discussion at national level with the competent authority in terms of the fitness for the equipment. Of course, in terms of the end-to-end safety assurance, there will be still elements to be demonstrated in front of the competent authority for the provision of services. We need to acknowledge also that we are yet in the first steps in the deployment, and the benefits will not be evident immediately. We have a transition period until 2028, and we will need to take still decided steps to make all those benefits more visible. In this regard, I would like to highlight that the EASA recently issued the first approval for a design and production organization, and this has been indeed an important milestone towards realizing the benefits of the new framework. Looking beyond the EU and addressing your question, I would like to highlight that putting standards in the front row is not only something that is being done at this time in Europe. ICAO, for instance, is also moving in this direction with a more integrated CNS and spectrum policy. And the ICNSS project, so the integrated CNS and spectrum project, is a fundamental initiative looking in this direction. The transition to a performance-based and extend at global level is also aimed to move in this direction, to build more on industry standards. So in this regard, continue building in the collaboration of all involved stakeholders. This morning in the opening speeches, it was very much highlighted that collaboration among all stakeholders to make sure that the needed standards are in place is really something that is needed, driving this harmonization at European and global level.
Thank you. Andrea, I have a question concerning this global harmonization. We saw this morning Andreas Boschen speaking about the new service delivery model. Do you think that this framework will enable this new service delivery model, or what is your opinion on that as ANSP side?
Of course, the global harmonization has always been the target. It's the target of the SAS regulations. Harmonization at European level is done through that we adapt the features of the ATM master plan. So harmonization in ATM ANS equipments is absolutely, it's necessary, we need it. I tend not to combine it with the service delivery model. So it is not an enabler. It is simply a new kind of technology also evolving for system infrastructure. So we have common IT solutions which have a modular construct and our IT components. Yeah, they build modern platforms which are modular and more adaptive to changes, and the software or the ATM functionality is on top of these. Currently, we are using monolithic systems. And so in DFS, we call it, we have the change from spaghetti to lasagne. There are other nice elements saying it's from the monolithic system, we go to the layered system, which means we have common IT layers underneath. We have ATM functionality, harmonized functionality we can put on top. And of course, this is the new functionality, the new philosophy. It is not, the harmonization is not the enabler, but they come together and they need to go together. We need, of course, new interface specifications. This EASA manual has shown us the detailed specifications. They go on performance, functionality, and interfaces. Interfaces, of course, in terms of data format protocols. And we also have, this is the ATM ANS service, and below we have the IT services, and this is the service delivery to ensure the ATM service and data relevant for these function in a good way. And yeah, this is, it goes together. It's not an enabler, it's complementary.
Yeah, thank you. Juan Luis, I have a question about the potential agility of this framework. We know all that this framework does not prescribe, in fact, what an ATM ANS system is. an ATM ANS equipment is. It could be a system, could be a constituent, could be a software, it could be anything. So could you give us your view on this flexibility and how you see that, how you can manage that as a ground manufacturer, in fact?
Well, the thing is that the terminology that you have used in your question is not completely defined in the current framework. It is, I think, inherited from other previous regulation, basic regulation. Okay, but I think it's important, and the thing is that as we DPO see the issue is that the regulation covers constituents that could represent hardware elements or software, both. ATM ANS systems that in fact they are aggregation of constituents, okay, and these are addressed in the regulation. Meanwhile, in the detailed specifications, they cover what is the equipment level, okay. So as we have in the current discussions and groups with the ASA, we know that the equipment is not prescribed. Okay, the equipment may refer to anything, to, as you say, constituents or systems or a group of constituents. The thing is that, as we can see, the regulation is complete in that sense because it is open to each level of granularity about the product. Okay. However, what we think is that this number of elements will imply in the future that we will face with different scenarios. And we see a lack of guidance and supporting information for these situations. Okay? And I give you a couple of examples. The ATM systems, for instance, they could be a single function product that is more manageable, or it could represent several functionalities, okay? And these functionalities may have different criticality. As Manuel said previously, depending on the criticality, there will be a specific attestation methods. We have an interpretation currently of what kind of compliance we should generate, but I think that we need more guidance and guidance material or supporting documentation regarding how to address an ATM system that contains functions with several criticality, and there are different attestation methods. Another example is dealing with the kind of information that we have to take into account in order to define the scope of the product. Today, the ATM system may contain not only software, but also hardware that comprises with platform or infrastructure. And we think that there should be more guidance about the kind of configuration that we have to certify or declare as a design compliance in order to fit into the task that the ANSP has to do when they instantiate the products. So I think, in summary, the regulation, in our opinion, or in my opinion, it is complete and open to handle this, but I see a lack of material that provides us a common interpretation how to implement that. And this is why it's so important, the community about EUROCAE and all these standardization bodies that could help to, in a joint group, a joint effort to create these documents that will provide more clarity about a common interpretation.
Okay, thank you. So I imagine, Manuel, you confirm what Juan Luis is saying about this, the definition of that?
Yes, indeed, I fully confirm what José Luis has said. The definition in the regulation is, as José Luis mentioned, pointing to any combination of systems and constituents, which could be hardware, software pieces. So the regulation is that flexible. This is the current status. When we look at implementation of particular new technologies, and the service-oriented architecture is a very good example that José Luis was bringing. Again, the relevance, the importance of having fit-for-purpose standards comes to light. This is a clear building block that is needed to facilitate, to enable a fast process throughout the certification. And this is one of the key strategic priorities. It was even mentioned this morning in the opening speech by Andreas Borschen. Is one of the key deployment objectives in the ATM Master Plan 2025. And there is a lot of work by most of the organizations present here today to address that implementation in the coming 10 years. There are different streams working on the SOA at the level of the CSR3 joint undertaking, at the level of the industry, and both ANSPs and manufacturing industry. And also EASA is already working also on that with a dedicated task force on the SOA. So they need to further work in further defining that guidance that Juan Luis was mentioning and developing those standards is already there. And again, I really need to make a call or a plea for everybody to really contribute to have those elements in place. The sooner they are there, the easier the implementation will be.
Thank you. Before going into the question from the audience, I want to request another question to Nikos. So the aviation community, thanks to EUROCAE Working Group 130, is there to support, in fact, the framework and to help the EASA to create new standards. How do you perceive this engagement from the community, and what is your view for the following years? Because we know that it will not be done in 2 seconds, so it will be a long time period of creation of standards and adaptation to the framework. So what is your view on that?
So actually, we already had already some questions about this new framework. It is a new framework, so it is very natural that there are questions about that. Fortunately, we have less questions than the previous panel that it was addressing some of the issues, but still there are open questions. And the Working Group 130 is a very good example of bringing all the different stakeholders. We're having the regulator, we're having ANSPs, we're having Eurocontrol, also NSDO. Of course, there is EUROCAE, there is industry there. So we can actually work together to answer these questions. The output of the Working Group 130 with the gap analysis and what needs to be done actually to support this regulatory framework will be really an important milestone that will identify what is the magnitude of the task that we're having ahead of us. That will help us actually then to prioritize, because I think that we're talking about the 2028. I don't think, and I hope it is not the case, that the EASA expects that we're going to reach the same maturity that we're having with the airborne side by 2028 with all the ground equipment. So this is where we need to take this pragmatic approach, maybe a step approach, so that we need to start addressing what are the key priorities, what will have some benefits immediately into the system. But at the same time, we need to start seeing how we're going to apply the same framework little by little overall. So, really the Working Group 130, just to come back to the questions, is a very good example of bringing the community in a collaborative way, taking best use of the expertise and the competencies of the different people and coming to a common way ahead and advancing effectively the ATM ground equipment certification.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to the Slido, and we will ask you some questions that the audience put in the tool. So I will say the first one is that today, is for Manuel. I think there is a lot of questions for you. I'm sorry. So the new ATM regulatory framework is under EASA regulation, for sure. That excludes the military. So how are we going to keep harmonization, certification of systems and procedures in that way, when military is not part of your task and military is part of the airspace, I would say?
Yes, that's a good question, and it's a reality that the basic regulation, and therefore all implementing acts hanging from the basic regulation, apply directly to civil provision of ATM ANS services, as well as in other aviation domains. The possibility to opt in is always present there, and in any case, the concept of equivalent level of service and the need or the responsibility for the states to demonstrate that when those services are provided to civil traffic, achieve that equivalent level of service is always there. A key way of demonstrating this equivalent level of service is, of course, applying a common set of principles applying the same industry standards. Today, we also heard here that there are moves and cooperation taking place in that direction. So that could be a good way to make sure that those synergies between the civil and military systems and services are achieved.
I'm trying to find if there is other questions for other people, but I think there is a lot of fun for Manuel. So but everybody can answer to all the questions. So a question between probably Nikos and Manuel or something about the standard. So can guidance material, for example, the ones that are written by Eurocontrol, be referenced as a valid standard or a valid means of compliance? So I don't know who can...
Maybe I'll start first and then I'll let Manuel give the answer view. So what we hope is that there is some very good material in this guidance material that it is also from EUROCAE, and we hope that we'll be able to leverage some of this. I think that we are talking with EASA to try to see how to best make this use, but if we really want to go and progress this task, we cannot ignore what is there. So there is guidance material, there is specifications, and we need to see on a case-by-case how to best make use of this without having to reinvent the wheel, develop new standards. So that's at least what we think, what we're proposing.
And of course, I can only confirm what Nico says. I think the important element is to make use of what is available and to find fit-for-purpose standards. These are to support the attestation of equipment. So if relevant material is out there, we need to identify and we need to make use of it. The title, whether it is a document is called guidance material or whether it's called a MOPS, it's called a standard, that doesn't matter. It's the quality of the content and the fitness for purpose to support the attestation of equipment. And I think it's a joint endeavor to identify and make use of that material.
And I can complement as chairman of 130, because the 130 task is, in fact, to make that assessment, make this catalog of standards that are available, to not reinvent the wheel when it is already existing, to assess it if it's not suitable and to see what we can do. And we can see in the first version of the detailed specification, there is already some Eurocontrol documents that are identified as means of compliance. So it's possible, yes, for sure. Another question maybe for Manuel, but probably Andrea or Juan-Luis could complement also, is that EASA is supposed to perform an evaluation of ATM ANS equipment currently operated by ANSPs. Can you tell us what is the progress on this evaluation?
Yes, that's an interesting question. Yes, as part of the transitional provisions, there is a request to have an assessment by 2028 when the transition period ends for those pieces of equipment with a declaration of verification issued before 2023 under the previous framework. So to continue operating after 2028, that evaluation will be needed. I can be very clear and direct here. That evaluation has not been initiated. Of course, we are still too early in the transition period. It will need to be planned and it will need to be undertaken at a relevant point in time. Of course, the population of equipment in those circumstances will only, let's say, diminish between now and 26, 27. And hopefully the population of equipment in that circumstance will not be that numerous when we reach close to the end of the transition period. But of course, the assessment will be done. Yes.
So maybe Andrea or Juan-Luis, you want to add something about this assessment of current equipment that are in operation? Or is it a fear or something like that, that on your legacy system you could have some rework, or is there something? I don't know.
No, we have no fear because we have followed our compliance requirements with the declaration of verification, and it is a conversation then between EASA and the supervisory authorities, so we are not involved.
No issues.
There is no fear. The fear comes when we do changes and cannot really fulfill the new requirements. Then there's a gray zone. Is the change a change to the declaration of verification? Do we need it under the new framework? But that's another question. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. We are not directly involved. We are confident about the work that we do in order to put them into operation. We feel comfortable with that, and we don't have any other issues regarding that. I agree with that. The changes, because in some cases we have maintenance projects with some legacy systems, and these maintenance do not impact in the functionality of the product. It just create bug fixing or enhancement about the product. And this is a question when we have to reciprocate the product or not, depending of the CPs. But this is another conversation that is related with the classification of the change.
And if maybe
yes,
just complement to clarify one aspect also, is that assessment is not a recertification, or it doesn't imply any demonstration of compliance with the detailed specs. It's an assessment that needs to consider also life cycle data. So what has been the in-service experience, and will build on the material, as Andrea was explaining, that is available, that was provided to the competent authorities. So we don't expect many surprises. Of course, we cannot rule out that there might be some surprises, but we do not expect many surprises there.
Okay. I'm trying to find some questions. There is a popular question, I can ask it, but I don't know if we have the answer, because I know that it's a debate which is still pending. So if COTS system software is used also in an operational environment, like Microsoft products or any products that are off the shelf, what is the correct way to treat this, as it cannot be certified or tested? So I think there is some guidance in the standard, but maybe you can elaborate. Somebody about the COTS?
Well, the thing is that the COTS are here with us. They are coming, just not they put the door to the down, because with the new technologies that are pushing us to this new delivery model and the cloud-based architectures, the amount of COTS will increase. So it is clear that it is an issue that we should analyze and to see how to take them into account for the compliance activities. It is already in the roadmap of some ongoing task force. For the ASA, there is a task force that it is in the roadmap of this task force in one work stream. So the community is aware that we have to, it's a topic that we have to analyze and to concrete about how to comply with them, because with the time they are going to be present and with more. So it is noted, but currently there is no activity regarding that. There is a new standard from EUROCAE regarding COTS that it provides some light, but anyway we have to, it's not just a matter of creating one standard that solves everything. It's a matter of agree about how to manage with them in the future in a common way, and this is already taken into account in some task force that are ongoing. This is my opinion.
Thank you. There is many questions about, I would say, the potential slowness of the framework. So I will pick one and I will go to another one. So with this new certification requirement, will considerably slow down ground system development in a time of many change. And there is also another question about the way to innovate quickly if the framework is there. So maybe some of you can, maybe starting with Manuel, can you speak about the potential, I would say, lack of speed compared to today about changing the system on the ground?
Yes, I can start, and please, my colleagues in the panel will complement. I would say, of course, it depends with the comparison. I think what is undoubtful is that we are in a moment of change for the ATM sector. There are a lot of drivers of change. There is a demand for higher capacity for the system. There are new technologies being available, as we heard today about artificial intelligence. We have developments like the path towards a more layered architecture, service-oriented architecture. All these are drivers of change, and they need to be accommodated. There, I believe the new framework is a key enabler, and is not at all block in the path of the implementation of these new technologies. Now there is a harmonized, unique attestation process that will be valid across Europe, compared with having to approach that discussion under the previous framework at national level, in parallel with 10, 15 NSAs, having different discussions, different interpretation of requirements. So if we would compare the two frameworks, for me it's clear that the new framework is accelerating, is making it possible, is enabling the introduction of these new technologies. But it's true that in a period of change, all these are challenges that need to be accommodated. And what Luis was highlighting, that these challenges are being identified by the industry, but all the actors. And of course, work is needed to be able to accommodate them. But the new framework is a key enabler that will allow us to move in this direction, hopefully in the timelines with the ambition expressed by the ATM Master Plan 2025.
Somebody want to react? Maybe Nikos? Yeah.
Maybe, I fully agree with what Manuel said. I think it is like many laws, it is the letter and the spirit of the law. So I think that for me, we have clearly the letter of the law. If we start to implement it in a way that will slow us down, then we have not really done the spirit of the law. So the spirit is really to go in this direction, to have a fair play in Europe. And it is up to us collectively, actually, to see how we're going to implement this new framework, taking the benefits without also introducing burden without benefits. But I think, and I think if we have a pragmatic approach, I think this is coming back to this issue of collaboration and a pragmatic approach. I think that will help actually to speed up effectively the deployment of technologies.
Thank you. I have a question for me, so I will answer. So maybe somebody mistaken, but concerning the working group 130, so for sure, the first task of this working group 130 is to establish the first catalog of standards that is already existing. The task that has been taken by the group is in fact to analyze and to see if the standards from EUROCAE are suitable for the framework, but the group, which is a EUROCAE group, is not supposed to have a look on the other standards. It's just listing the standards. So, for example, Eurocontrol standards, ETSI standards, or any other standards. So maybe I made a mistake when I spoke, but the group 130 is not supposed to analyze the standards that are not EUROCAE. And then concerning the other question for me,
can I
yes, maybe you can complement also. Yes.
Sorry, I just want to say, okay, for sure, I mean, it's a EUROCAE group, and I fully understand what you're saying, but it is a group that has a considerable expertise. So let's not lose that opportunity, at least with organizations that they're willing to bring the standards to try to look at them, because then we're having a group actually that is having all the required expertise. And for me, that can be a benefit for the framework, actually, if we can go a bit step that not just addressing the EUROCAE standards, but if, for example, Eurocontrol is willing to bring the information to this group, I would propose that we try to see how we can also include it in some kind of assessment.
And the other question is concerning the transversal standards that could be interesting to have a look. So the group is also, is looking at all the standards that are today used by the aviation community on the ground. So some people, the person that asked the question speaking about AI or cybersecurity, if we have some documents that are used by the community, it will be bring to this catalog saying, okay, it exists. And so the first task of the group is to make the catalog of all the standards that are used by the community. EUROCAE standard will be analyzed to see if they are suitable for the framework. And then after that, I imagine it will be EASA in charge of looking at all the others to see if they are suitable for the framework, or they could task somebody, they could task Eurocontrol or anyone. But it's not part of the group.
But if I
yes, Andrea, go ahead.
This, the task of the group is as well to identify characteristics which make a standard fit for purpose to be referenced in an EASA detailed specification. Yeah. And this is really important, I think, because we need standards that both ensure that the function is certified according to the specification, and that the test environment at the DPO surroundings are testable, and that in the ANSP integrated world, then we do the validating. So the tests, the specifications need to ensure the functions are the functions are the right ones, and we at the ANSP we do the validation that they are that they are rightly functioning, and the standard must consider the test environment at the DPO, so that we not come with what we have today. We have a certified OLD interface, it's a very common example, and we have another certified OLD interface, and we put the ATS units together and it doesn't work. So we want, and because I think there was a mistake in the standard, and we need the right standards, and we need the right characteristics, and Working Group 130 should take care of this.
Yes, thank you. So we are approaching the end. So I have just one question. I'm changing the question because I want to adapt it. It's for Manuel. So the question was asking how many application has been today put in place in the EASA framework, but I'm jumping to, if there is a lot, how EASA is addressing this amount of DPO requests. If there is a lot, I don't know how many you already received. So maybe you can answer. And it will be the last question before closing.
Yes, information about applications, of course, is something that we need to treat confidentially. I cannot even, or I should not give the number. I would say that in our assessments, we have considered that we are expecting a population around 80 DPOs by the end of the transition period 2028. And we have received already several tens of applications without going to more detailed numbers. And indeed, it's a challenge for EASA. We are working also in reinforcing the team within the constraints. And I could complain, as probably any other organization in the audience, about the constraints. And we are reinforcing the team, and hopefully we will be able to manage all those applications.
So thank you very much to all of you, so Andrea, Juan Luis, Nikos, and Manuel. Maybe, Manuel, you want to do something?
I see. Yes, we have a few minutes left.
Okay, you can. It's just because I want to pass the ball to Anna after that, but you can finish.
I wanted to reinforce one message, and it's not only EASA. Of course, it's an European system where we work in partnership with NSAs.
Yeah.
Also, we have that support, and a few NSAs are already having the willingness, the resources to contribute, to participate in the teams, and this will also be one of the drivers that make it possible to process that amount of applications in the coming years. And from here also, I really want to thank the NSAs and their contribution, or the NCAs. I should use the right term, national competent authorities now with SES2+. So thank you also for them as partners within the European system.
Somebody wants to add something? We still have some seconds.
Maybe just to highlight the collaboration. For me,
okay.
this is the message that we keep hearing all day, and I think really collaboration is a key criteria for the success of this activity. So that's for me, so collaboration, pragmatism, this is the two things that we need actually to make sure that this framework, this new framework will bring the benefits that they are there. I mean, the target is there.
For me, the same. International collaboration, it has appeared, I think, in every flash talk or panel. Collaboration is there. It's probably the tool that will open everything. So I don't remember who said that, but it comes from the history that coming together is the beginning, keeping together is the progress, but working together is success. So I think that and we have to look for our interest, but the big interest is the common one. So international cooperation for us is the key. Which I agree with you, Nikos.
Everything has been said.
Okay, that's very good. So thank you very much to all of you. And
Thank you.
So I hope that now you know everything about the ground equipment framework, and I will let Anna to close the session of today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pascal, and you even had 23 seconds left to go. So anyway, thank you to all the panelists for this very insightful discussion. I think it was very complex topic, but good to know that lots of activities are going on, and we see a lot of progress on a number of these topics. So with this, we come to the end of today's program of the symposium. Just a couple of important information. So for the General Assembly, which is happening in about half an hour, please exit the auditorium and re-register. So it's members only, as you know. On the back, I don't have one because I'm not allowed to vote, but on the back of your badge, you should have a QR code which allows you to re-enter the room. But please do so only when the staff is ready to open the doors again. For those that are not attending the GA, the pre-announcement here again, the dinner and awards night is starting at 7:30 in the main hall, which brings me to my next request. Try to leave the room through the left doors because the catering is already starting to set up so that we don't disturb them too much. And if you don't join us, neither at the General Assembly nor at the dinner, so know that tomorrow's session will start at 9:15 here in the room sharp with a keynote speech from the European Commission. I'd like to thank again all our sponsors, Airbus, Indra, and Enaira on the gold level, Collins as silver, and Skyguide, Frequentis, Honeywell, and Ansen as bronze sponsors, and our partner, the European Commission. Without you, it would really not be possible, and I think we see all this happening thanks to your sponsorship. With this, thank you very much. Enjoy your evening. If you're not attending the GA, enjoy Madrid for 2 hours. If you are attending the GA, enjoy just a very quick break, come back, and then you still have some time for refreshments afterwards. Thank you very much. See you later.
Mas não sei, me cansei.